Starting us off at number 10, Reddit user Turtle Shell Magic's story. Now this one is crazy, referring to her best friends as M and L for the sake of the story, goes as follows. At M's house, the gang was using a Ouija board and asked how the spirit died, to which it responded murder. When they asked the spirit for the details of the murder, it responded, not I. It also gave a name which the user couldn't remember and a date from the 1800s. Then the mood in the room just changed. The planchette was ripped out of the girl's hands and flew across the room. At that point, they put the box away and stopped playing with it. A week later, M's mother suddenly passed away from cancer. It was a total surprise as no one knew she was ill. Not long after, L's mom was hospitalized for having a severe drinking problem. And that same week, this user's mother had an emergency hysterectomy surgery. They claim the board must have had something to do with it, and ever since that night, they've heard voices, footsteps, and seen dark shadows. It'd been 9 years and the Reddit user still felt as if they were haunted.
Coming in at number 9 now, we have the Winged Shadow. So this one's from Jo, who played with the Ouija board with her friend. They were communicating with some sort of spirit, but its replies didn't seem malevolent, so they just stopped playing. Determined not to be hit with any kind of bad juju, the friend got rid of the board, and that was that. But every night at 3:15 AM, Jo started waking up feeling completely terrified. She had no idea why, but she got the feeling someone was in her room with her, and she would refuse to look in that direction of the room. This continued for a few weeks before she investigated that corner in the daytime to find the Ouija board there, despite literally seeing her friend get rid of it. Jo threw it away again, but again she kept waking up at 3:15 and realized the board was somehow back in her room. Even her roommate started saying her part of the house just seemed shadowy and creepy. The shadows inside her room were also getting worse to the point there'd be 4 nights a week she legit wouldn't even sleep. One night her dog kept growling and crying at something behind her while she was walking through her house, and she was like, shit, is there something behind me? She slowly turned around and what she saw made her heart stop. She ran for her life as fast as she could away from the monster literally coming after her. This entity was a huge thing that had wings stretching from the ceiling to the floor. Its body didn't touch the ground and its head was cloaked and also not attached to the body. After getting to her room, she locked herself in the bathroom and stayed there all night. Anne has since gone through extensive therapy, and I mean, I get it, I would have to as well.
Moving on to number 8 from Reddit user Hammerhands. So a group of college friends decided to gather in a dorm room one night and take out the Ouija board. Some had used one before while others were skeptical it worked at all. Around 11 PM they had one of their skeptics named Gary sit down and communicate. He asked if it was real or all BS, to which the planchette rushed over to no. Gary then asked for the board to prove it was the real deal, which is when the lights started to flicker in the dorm and the building's fire alarm went off. The students were all evacuated outside, so they locked their door and headed out. After about 20 minutes it was determined to be a false alarm, so the students returned back to their dorm room only to find that the Ouija board had gone missing. And who knows what happened to Gary ever since that night. I certainly haven't heard from him.
Coming in at number 7 is Angela Jackson. Now, Angela attended a spiritualist meeting wherein a psychic gave her a warning that her deceased dad was trying to tell her. He said, "You're thinking about using a Ouija board, don't, no good will come of it." Ignoring this, she went to her neighbor's house and pulled out her own homemade Ouija board. Like, really, Angela? Just listen to your dad, he knows better. The two started playing and the spirit spelled out that it wanted to speak to Angela and then spelled out, "Die, bitch." The spirit claimed he was Satan and he had been murdered just like you will be. Honestly, firstly, how does one even murder Satan? Can you even murder Satan? Anyway, the glass they were using as a planchette then flew across the room and shattered, and at that point they were like, okay, well this is over. Over the next few months, Angela tried to convince her friends to contact the spirit again, but she never communicated with Satan again. Having given up and forgotten about it, she was on her way to her son's house one day when she heard a growl behind her of a man saying, "Die, bitch." Why did he say that? She turned around and saw a man wielding a claw hammer which he used to hit her on the head twice. Angela ended up waking up in the hospital with a fractured skull, alive, but still lives in fear that she'll get murdered one day.
And into the number 6 spot, the Mexican Ouija board story. 22-year-old Alexandra Huerta, her brother 23-year-old Sergio Huerta, and their 18-year-old cousin Fernando Cuvez were all hospitalized after messing around with a Ouija board while in Mexico. Apparently just minutes into using the board, the 3 young adults were showing symptoms of someone possessed. More specifically, Alexandra was growling and flailing her arms as if she was being controlled by an evil entity. Sergio and Fernando allegedly started showing symptoms of blindness, deafness, and hallucinations. At first, the family's parents asked a priest to perform an exorcism, but he refused because they weren't regular churchgoers. The family then called paramedics who had to restrain Alexandra so she wouldn't hurt herself or anyone else, and provided all through with painkillers, sedatives, and eye drops, which seemed to work and stop whatever it was that took over these three young adults.
Now at number 5 is the nuisance. This one's from Jeanette Kay, who said this happened to her when she was 11 years old. Now Jeanette's sister and 2 friends decided to play with a homemade Ouija board while she was doing homework in the next room. A few minutes go by and she sees this person walk by the kitchen, but it wasn't a person. It was a solid black shadow of a man, and he had made no sounds or footsteps. She brushed it off as her just seeing things, but then her little brother was like, "Did you just see that shadow too?" So now she was like, damn it was definitely real. Their sister and her friends came in at that moment saying they stopped playing because the spirit had left. And I mean, she wasn't wrong, it did leave the game, but it didn't leave their lives. It started haunting them at home, opening and closing doors at any given time of the day, loud footsteps when no one else was home, random cold spots throughout the house, lights flickering on and off for no reason, you know the whole haunting spiel by now. The spirit would even push their mattress from beneath when they were asleep. Like, it was just a very general nuisance all around, and it stayed with them for 5 more years before finally leaving.
Slide into number 4, Reddit user No Springs. When our friend here was about 12 or 13 years old, they decided to get together with some friends and play Ouija. At first, the board started spelling things out that apparently scared them, and then wrote out, "I could see you through the window," followed by "I could see you through his eyes," and then "I'm under the car." Somehow this group of brave teens mustered up the courage to go outside into the dark night and check under the car, where they found a hissing black cat. Bad vibes. Of course, scared to death, the group of friends ran back inside, which is when the power immediately shut off. A few minutes later, it turned back on, but the group decided to stay up all night long and never touch the board again.
Filling our number 3 slot is Jackson. Now this story was shared by Carol, and it occurred back in 1978 when she was about 12 years old. While her dad was at work, her and her mum decided to play with a Ouija board. Nice mother-daughter bonding activity. Her mum asked who they were speaking to, and the planchette spelled out Jackson, even though none of them knew a Jackson. She then asked if he was a good spirit, and he replied saying no. She asked how he died next, but the planchette didn't move. Getting a bit scared at this point, her mum said, "Since you're not gonna tell us, we're gonna say goodbye now," and then Jackson pointed to no. Adamant on leaving, her mum said goodbye, and then so did Jackson. That night, Carol heard this growling sound coming through from underneath her floor, and so she went and got her mum to investigate, but as soon as she walked into the room, it just stopped. Her mum also smoked cigarettes, but that night her cigs smelled like sulfur, and she claimed they tasted like it too. Things are getting pretty sus at this point, I'm not gonna lie. Anyway, 3 days later, the growling started up again, and they got the dad to go out and investigate, but there was nothing outside, no animal, nothing that could have made that sound. It got louder and started getting more guttural, and at this point everyone was shitting themselves, like everyone. Her mom started yelling at the floor and telling it to stop, and after 2 hours it finally did. The next day her mom got quite sick, and her temperature was around 102 degrees Fahrenheit, not Celsius. I'm not gonna make that same mistake again. Ha! They took her to the hospital, and they found that she had an infection all through her body, and had they left it 1 more day she would have died. The family believed that Jackson must have died from a blood infection that he was never treated for, and that's how the mom's condition came about, because she was completely healthy before that.
In at 2, the killer Ouija board. Way back in 1935, a man was arrested for shooting his wife in the back a total of 4 times. The man claimed he did it in self-defense, as he was being abused by his wife on a regular basis. The reason for the abuse? His wife would communicate with the Ouija board every week, which would tell her the alleged things her husband had been doing. One of those things had been cheating with a neighbor. Another was that he gave that neighbor a large sum of money. At first, the wife would try to call her husband out for the lie, saying she caught him again. Then things got worse, as she would tie him to bedposts with wires and whip him. Eventually, she started to prod him and stab his shins with a knife. It wasn't until she had a gun to his head that he would confess to everything, just telling her what she wanted to hear in hopes of stopping the abuse. After she let him free and stepped away for a moment, the husband saw his chance and grabbed the gun she left on the nightstand. He shot her, and upon explaining his story to the courts, his killing was justified due to the fact that this man feared for his life.
And finally, at number 1, we have the goodbye. Now this one was shared by Redditor Celine the Moon Tyson, and she said that when she was 14, she and her 2 friends decided to play with a Ouija board. They didn't think anything would happen until the planchette started spelling out hello. Intrigued, they started asking the thing questions like where it was, etc., and it responded vaguely, but then all of a sudden it started moving towards random letters and numbers on its own. Freaking out, they stopped playing, stuffed the board back in the box, and tried to forget what just happened. And that's where it all went tits up. Now the whole weekend after that, they could tell there was some sinister energy in the air. On the Monday, the user saw a tall shadowy figure standing in the corner of her bedroom, just looking at her, but she tried to convince herself she was just seeing things. People need to stop doing that. You are seeing what you are seeing. That night, she felt a heavy sensation on her body all night, and when she woke up, she had scratches all over her arms. Coincidence? I think not. It got worse the more time went on. The user started hearing voices and would wake up with bruises. A year later, she moved house, but the spirit went with her. It would throw her off her bed every single night, so we know it was attached to her, not the house. She claims now her whole body is filled with bruises, and the voices she hears have been getting so loud to the point sometimes she can't even think because the voices are all she hears. She would go places and just not remember going there, and the last thing she remembered was a spirit in the corner of her room saying, "You will join us, we will pull you in." Ugh. Would not like to be her, I'm sorry. Alright, so starting off this countdown at number 10, we have possession. We were just talking about it. So I don't know which idiot would even do this, but never ask a demon to possess you. What?
But people actually do that. People do ask a demon to possess them.
Spirits just love possessing humans anyway, so the fact that some idiot would be dumb enough to actually invite them to do so is like a free pass. They will do it and you will lose your free will, as a spirit will literally live in you as you. You don't even know what entity you're dealing with on the other side. You could literally be asking Beelzebub to possess you and you'd have no one to blame but yourself.
I mean, in my opinion, it's pretty obvious to not ask the board about possession or for a spirit to possess you, but you'd be surprised about the number of people that actually ask these questions. Seriously, you think it's cool to start foaming at your mouth and have blood pouring out from your eyes as you start crawling on all fours? Nah, you are getting sent straight to an asylum where you will spend your life locked away.
I just don't like when they crawl on all fours. How do you do that with your, how do you do that? That's actually
Their spine is like in half.
Oh,
like,
no.
I don't know how spirits do that.
Coming in at number 9 is illness. I don't know why I said it with a smile, but we're gonna go with it. Now, when you're communicating with spirits in the afterlife, a very common question anyone would want to ask is about their own health. I mean, they're ghosts. Surely they know more than we do. I mean, that's the least I expect. Now, you're there using the board hoping to find out if you're getting sick, if you're already sick, if someone you love is sick, or so on. And I get it. Why wouldn't you want to know in advance so you could prevent it? But multiple paranormal experts alike claim you shouldn't ask Ouija board questions regarding disease, illness, treatment, or anything like that, and they have good reason to think so. For one, the entity you could be talking to could have died in like 1864, meaning they have zero knowledge of modern healthcare practices and could probably misdiagnose you and tell you have like the bubonic plague when you really just have bronchitis. Secondly, the answer could stress you out and not even be true, and the stress would then weaken your immune system and get you sick, aka the whole thing would turn into a self-fulfilling prophecy. All in all, don't do it, lads. At number 8, we have the future, and believe me, we know how tempting it would be to ask a Ouija entity about your future. Like, I want to know so many things. When will I get married? To who? What will life be like? Will Trump ever get impeached? Etc. But you shouldn't do it. Things change all the time. The future isn't set in stone, so what could the entity even tell you? I mean, that honestly really depends on what you believe. Muslims believe that your life is pre-written, so there's a course your life is meant to follow, whereas others believe it's constantly changing.
And spirits may not have all the answers that we're looking for. I mean, I don't think they have harnessed the power of time travel. As a result, whatever answers you get from them, probably made up. Maybe they say something extremely terrifying, like that we all die from a big pandemic.
That's too close to home, Lindsay.
Sorry.
It's too soon to make those jokes.
Knowing this information would probably scare the crap out of you and drive you insane. Not only this, but maybe you will contact a demon that purposely wants to mess with your head. And so they will say some messed up things about the future just to scare you.
Like, I'm already battling with so many already internal demons, I don't need any more. You know what I mean? Goodbye.
Making our way down the list at number 7, we have the cause of death. When using a Ouija board, you are communicating with a once living soul. If you begin prying into their personal life, it may upset them, especially if you start asking questions about how they died. I think it's safe to say that they probably don't enjoy being dead, and so they will probably be very uncomfortable if you start asking them about it. Keep in mind, you're the living one and they aren't. They are jealous that you are still alive and that they are no longer. If you keep asking them questions about death, then they may become upset, and that's the last thing you want to do, make a spirit angry. How would you feel if you suffered a tragic death and next thing you know, a little 16-year-old named Brittany is fooling around with the board making jokes about your death? I know that would piss me off. And who knows what kind of abilities they have. Anger them enough and they could make you pay. This is exactly what happened to a group of friends. Apparently they summoned a spirit with the board and started asking intimate questions about their death. Next thing you know, the spirit knocked over a candle and that caught a bunch of paper towels on fire and half of the kids' living room got burnt down. So, just saying.
Okay, now at number 6 are jokes. Now this one made me laugh before I even started talking about it, honestly, and I know I didn't do it, but in my head I did. Now look, I totally get it. You're sitting there, barbecue sauce on your titties, and you think to yourself, now I could wipe this sauce off, or I could just play with a Ouija board. You go with the latter, your friends are all over, barbecue sauce on their titties as well, and the one class clown in your group is feeling rather funny and thinks it's smart to start the session off with a joke. First of all, RIP, because that kid's getting possessed and killed first, but secondly, Ouija entities cannot take a joke. They probably don't even know what a joke is. It's not in their purgatory vocabulary. All they know is death and suffering. Do you really think the entity is just gonna flicker the lights or something to signal to you that they laughed? No, they're gonna send a piece of window shard straight through your eye, mate.
I was just thinking of a ghost being like, ha. Honestly, exactly what she said. I mean, maybe they could do like a knock knock joke, but still, nothing is funny when it comes to the spirit world. It needs to be taken pretty seriously.
What if like the entity is trying to make a joke by like lighting something on fire or something? It's like, we have different definitions of humor.
Exactly.
This is not funny. Coming in at number 5 is murder. I understand that spirits and entities on the other side of the Ouija board kind of get a bad rep. We've seen the movies, we've heard the stories. Hell, I did like a 5-part series on Ouija boards that destroyed lives, so believe me when I say these spirits are not received well. But the one cardinal rule of Ouija boards, other than always closing your session, is to never ask the entity if they're going to kill you. Firstly, it's bloody rude. You can't just generalize all Ouija spirits and assume the one you're talking to is evil and full of bloodlust. Spirits have feelings too, and some are actually nice. Some just want to talk, like how about you ask them how their day was for once? Purgatory sucks? Okay, sorry. I digress. This question could also be viewed as disrespectful towards a spirit, which could anger them and make them overstay their welcome. Or if they weren't planning to kill you before, they probably are now, so adios, amigo.
Coming in at number 4 is the spirit's presence. There's a lot of people out there that want to witness paranormal activity firsthand. We like to call these people crazies. No, I'm just kidding. I understand where they're coming from.
Like, I would shit myself.
Like, in order to make up their mind about whether or not ghosts are real, they kind of need to experience it firsthand. But whatever you do, do not ask a spirit to show themselves or to make noise. There's way too many scary movies out there where this happens and they are greeted with a terrifying pop-up of a disfigured face. So, do you really want to see that?
Definitely not. I would for sure defecate on the spot. Now sometimes a spirit isn't malevolent and shows you it's there by opening a door or manifesting a gust of wind, but most spirits are dark and will manifest by possessing your friend or throwing the board against the wall. They're already answering your questions by moving the planchette. You don't need to disrespect them further by being like, oh, can you just confirm you're real and not a myth? Cheers.
Coming in at number 3, we have don't ask about Zozo. If you are new to the spirit realm, you may be wondering, Lindsay, who or what is Zozo? Well, Zozo is a sinister demon that is known to harm or trick Ouija board players. Zozo has been linked to murders and suicides all throughout the world. He has caused mental and physical harm to players, and in one situation, he was responsible for the near death of a young kid. Zozo will often wait until the players are vulnerable and then he will harm them. He may also pretend to be a friendly spirit, will try to befriend you, and then trick and harm you. In fact, some players who contacted Zozo have been subjected to extreme bad luck, and others have become very depressed. So I recommend never asking questions about Zozo, like, can I speak to Zozo? Trust me, you don't want to mess around with this demon.
Now at number 2 is how you're going to die. Now I've thought about this question so much, like would I want to know how I'm gonna die? Like, of course, on one hand, I'd like to know because then I could spend the rest of my life preparing for it, because not gonna lie, I'm terrified of dying. On the other hand, I'd rather not know, so it's not like a cloud hanging over my head for the rest of my life. I already have the depression cloud, I don't need another one. The reason you should never ask a Ouija spirit about your death is simply because they may not know or the answer could change. Would you ask?
No, are you crazy?
I would want to know.
No, I wouldn't want to know. I'd be like huddled in a corner like,
save me.
So let's say the board tells you that you're gonna die in a car crash. Well, wouldn't that make you terrified of driving? You get in your car every day wondering what day is going to be your last. It could cause you to become overly anxious or overly cautious. Either way, you would be fearing for your life daily. And in our number 1 spot, we have the death date. Listen carefully when I say this, okay? Never, and I mean never, under any circumstance, ask the board when you're going to die. I mean, that seems like a given, but you wouldn't believe the number of people that ask ask the board this question. So, for starters, who even wants to know the day they're going to die? I certainly don't. But anyways, it's safe to say that you would be scared out of your mind if the board told you that you were going to die soon. Not only that, but maybe the spirit is an evil one that will try and manipulate you with this date so that you purposely fear for your life. Over on Reddit, there are tons of concerned posts from people who were told that they only had a month left to live. They were too scared to go outside and continue to live a normal life. It completely ruined their life for a month. Not only that, but you could create a self-fulfilling prophecy and die on the date that the board said you would. This happened to one man. He was told he had only a couple weeks left to live and he became super ill. He felt sick all the time and did pass away on the exact date, but he died from dehydration and malnutrition. He just wasn't caring for himself properly, and that's why he died. Starting off this countdown, we have the rules. So for those of you who don't know, Ouija boards come with a strict set of rules. When I was young and dumb, I never knew these rules, and me and my friends would just fool around with no care. Seriously, like, the board doesn't come with a set of instructions. At least the one that I had didn't. But these rules are super important. Let me stress that again. Super important. Basically, if you don't accurately follow them, then it puts all the players at risk. So here are some important rules to follow. And in no means is this meant to be like a guide for you to use. So you should always say goodbye when you're done playing. And by saying goodbye, I mean you actually say it verbally and then you move the planchette to goodbye. This should cut the connection between the spiritual world and our world. You also can never tease, disrespect, or make fun of the spirits or board. This angers them. You should never play alone. This makes you more vulnerable to being attacked by evil spirits. Never play in a cemetery. It's pretty self-explanatory. Never ask the board when you're going to die. Never burn the board. Never invite the entity to make noise or show itself. And lastly, never ever leave the planchette on the board. It's considered bad luck. There are several more rules you have to follow, but basically if you mess up the rules or don't follow them, then it puts yourself in danger. In our 9th spot, we have the manipulation. Ouija boards open the doors for anything to come through to speak to you. What's scary is that you don't know the intentions of the spirits that you get in contact with. In fact, it's said that evil spirits will often manipulate the players to gain their trust. They may do so by telling you information you want to hear. They may claim that they're a deceased relative, but in turn, they can just say that so that they can gain control of you. Once you let your guard down, thinking you're in contact with a peaceful spirit, then they can use this to get into our world and wreak havoc on your life. Moving on to number 8, we have the connection. If you are foolish enough to play with an Ouija board, just know that you should never use it in your home. The reason being, well, if you don't properly break the connection between the spirits you summoned, then guess what? They're now going to be residing in your home. Basically, they will feed off your energy and try to weaken you to gain control of you. Their energy will constantly be present in your home and you'll be subjected to constant torment. In our 7th spot, we have the malevolent spirits. Like I mentioned before, the Ouija board opens the doors to the spiritual world. There's no way to predict or control what comes through. As a result, you may get in contact with a malevolent spirit with sinister intentions. They could physically and mentally hurt you. Now, if you're using the board and the planchette starts counting down or going through the alphabet, then you should immediately end your session by saying goodbye. A lot of users claim that this is one sign that you have gotten in contact with an evil spirit. Another warning sign is if the planchette repeatedly makes a figure 8 or infinity symbol. Again, you should end the session immediately by saying goodbye. This is another thing that evil spirits will do. So stay safe and please don't allow evil spirits into our world. Moving on to number 6, we have the possession. Okay. One of the more obvious reasons to why you shouldn't use the board is because you could become possessed. This isn't a joke. There have been several reports of Ouija boards triggering demonic possessions. In November 2014, 35 students at a school in Bolivia were all sent to the hospital after playing with an Ouija board. It was believed that they all became possessed. They had fallen into a trance-like state, were profusely sweating, were more aggressive, and had rapid pulses. Then, over the years, there have been other reports of people getting possessed while using this board. Mexico especially is said to have a lot of reports reported possessions. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the creepy doll. Now, if you still think that it's okay to play with an Ouija board, then here is a true story that will convince you otherwise. This story was posted on Reddit by the user Jake Nichols. He shares the time that him and his family were using a Ouija board in their basement. Good family bonding, I guess. At first, the board wasn't really working. Then out of nowhere, it said one of the guy's social security number. Then the entity started sharing more creepy personal information. The last thing the entity spelled out was the word doll. Well, prior to playing with the board, the group moved a porcelain doll out of the room and placed it on a stack of towels. They did this because they were creeped out of having the doll in the same room as them. After the Ouija board spelled the word doll, they heard a knock on the door where they put the porcelain doll in. When they opened the door, the doll was now standing upright, straight in front of them, staring at them. Moving on to number 4, we have the death date. Again, this is a real story. This story was posted on Reddit by the user Anuvin. Basically, there was this one girl who was friends with a boy named Johnny who was suffering from cystic fibrosis. As a result, he was recently hospitalized. One day, her and her friend Shelly decided to play with an Ouija board. One of the questions they asked was about Johnny's condition. But all the board did was spell out the date, June 24th, 1987. Well, on June 24th, Johnny sadly passed away. That's crazy. It just shows you how powerful these spirits are and how much they know about us and our lives. In our 3rd spot, we have the injuries. Demons or evil spirits are very, very powerful and should never be underestimated. If you come in contact with one while playing, then they could physically or mentally harm you. In fact, one man who played with an Ouija board claims that he woke up with sore, unexplained bruises all over his body. Another woman was playing with the board when she felt like she was being choked. She couldn't breathe, and later there were bruise marks on her neck. Other players claim that they have been scratched by entities, and one even claims that after using the board, he was pushed down the stairs by something that they had contacted. In our 2nd spot, we have Zozo. Using an Ouija board puts you at risk for contacting an evil demon known as Zozo. On March 24th, 2009, the presence of Zozo first came to light when a man named Darren Evans shared his interactions with Zozo online. He was playing with a board when he contacted a spirit who called itself Zozo. At first, according to Evans' account, the interactions with Zozo were seemingly harmless. He experienced noises, moving objects, and flickering lights. Then he started getting scratches and bruises on his skin. During one session with Zozo, he had to rush into the bathroom where his girlfriend was giving their 1-year-old daughter a bath. His girlfriend was gone, and the tub was overflowing, and his daughter was drowning. He believes that Zozo was behind this. Now, you see, tons of other people have come forward and claimed that they have also come in contact with a spirit that calls itself Zozo. It is said to target mentally unstable and vulnerable users. Zozo even has been linked to murders and suicides throughout the world. In fact, this entity dates back to 1816. It is mentioned in the book Dictionnaire Infernal by Colin Duplancy. This book tells the story of a young girl who gets possessed by 3 demons: Minnie, Capulet, and Zozo. It's said that if Zozo reveals itself while you're using the board, to end the session immediately before you become his next victim. And in our number 1 spot, we have the death. This reason alone should prevent you from playing with an Ouija board. It is said that the board can kill you. Well, not the board itself, although I'm sure some people have used it as a weapon sometime in their life. But no, the board itself isn't deadly, it's the spirits you get in contact with that are. So evil spirits can kill you in multiple ways. They could cause you to get a viral disease by attacking your immune system. They can manipulate you mentally so that you end up taking your own life. Or they can cause unexplained accidents. In fact, one girl claims that a spirit that her and her friends contacted was responsible for her friend's mother's death. Apparently, after contacting the spirit through the board, a week later, her mom's friend died suddenly from cancer. Then the same week, her own mom was rushed into the emergency room, but thankfully, she survived. In another account, a girl says that her grandmother was killed after messing with an Ouija board. Later that day, her grandmother was struck and killed by a distracted driver. So not only do Ouija boards have the power to take your life, but they can also kill your loved ones too.
Starting us off on this list, in at number 10, the whole town went insane. In the 1920s, the population of a small town in Southern California went insane after they fiddled around with the Ouija board. It all began when the police arrested 7 people after they stripped nude and began to act completely insane and unstable. Over the course of a few days, the insanity spread like wildfire throughout the town. The police officers were even found stripping down naked and running into stores and banks while yelling hysterically. The town hall officials were terrified that this insanity would spread to other nearby towns, so they brought in a ton of mental health specialists to examine all the people who went insane. Even though they weren't able to come to a conclusion, the government didn't want to take any risks, so they banned Ouija boards within their town limits. That is crazy. In at number 9, never play the Ouija board in a graveyard. I mean, who is doing it? When you're playing the Ouija board, you are contacting whatever spirits are around you. So logically, if you're playing your Ouija board in a graveyard, you're taking a pretty big risk. When you're in a graveyard, you are literally surrounded by spirits and ghosts and whatever is around you. So the chances of you contacting an evil or a wicked spirit, it increases dramatically. You also shouldn't use Ouija boards at the scene of an accident, a mass death, or murder. That's because the amount of violence that surrounds those places are more likely to attract spirits or demons who, they want to hurt you once you summon them. Figure 8 ironically comes into this list at number 8. Alright, so there are a lot of ways you can tell if the Ouija board session has gone horribly wrong. One of the major telltales is when your planchette moves through the alphabet or numbers, or if it hits the corners or makes a figure 8. If your planchette, that little figure thing you move around the board, if it begins to move across the board in any of these patterns, it's probably a good time to say goodbye. Bathe in holy water and go see a priest, because it is time to confess all of your sins. These are all the signs that your Ouija board have been taken over by an evil spirit or a demon. But the worst case scenario is if your planchette moves in a figure 8 position, because the evil spirits is letting you know that they have control of the board and you are no longer in control, my friend. So if you see the figure 8, you're supposed to immediately end the session by saying goodbye and just hope and pray that the evil spirits leave you alone. Next up at number 7, never burn a Ouija board. This is a big no-no. According to a popular urban legend, you are never supposed to burn a Ouija board no matter what. If you decide to burn a Ouija board, prepare to suffer from the consequences. Apparently, if you set a Ouija board on fire, you anger all of the spirits and ghosts who have made contact with you, and then they are released from the board and they're going to be in your house. A lot of people who have tried to get rid of the boards that by burning it have reported that when they set the board on fire, it made a loud, high-pitched screaming sound that haunts them while they sleep. And another person have actually reported that after they set their board on fire, they found one piece of the board, it survived, and it said the word yes. Not sure what that means, so make sure you guys don't burn your Ouija boards, unless you guys are prepared to suffer. You could release spirits into your home, and this brings us into number 6. If you manage to not get possessed by a demon after playing with the Ouija board, that doesn't mean that you won't have any negative consequences to deal with. You could easily release a bad spirit into your home. It is believed that Ouija boards act like portholes to other dimensions, and when you open up the board, you have no idea who you're going to be communicating with. Some spirits might appear to be friendly, but spirits are compulsive liars, and they will say anything to trick you. After you have the session with the board, you might start to hear some strange noises, things might start to move around your home, or your electrical devices might start to stop working on their own. Either way, you are going to need a lot of holy water and prayers, because once a demon or bad spirit haunts your home, you're gonna have a tough time getting rid of it. Gotta call like the Ghostbusters or someone. I'm not sure. I'm not an expert in this. Okay, be careful, because in at number 5, you could be possessed if you play with the Ouija board. It is believed that when you play with the Ouija board, you're putting your life in danger, because you could be messing around with spirits or demons, and these guys have the ability to possess your body and soul. For me, I guess I don't have a problem with this because I don't have a soul. Well, there are countless reports of people being possessed by ghosts or demons after using the Ouija board. Over in Colombia, 20 students were rushed to the hospital after a Ouija board session went horribly wrong. A bunch bunch of these students became hysterical and started to faint after they played with the Ouija board mobile app. They had a demonic look in their eyes and they were shouting, "The devil is going to take me." Doctors couldn't find anything medically wrong with them, so they brought in a priest to try to help these possessed students. Looking through the planchette comes in on this list at number 4. According to the spooky urban legend, if you look through that device, you will see spirits that are surrounding you while you are playing the Ouija board. I advise you guys to not try this. I've never tried this because I am way too afraid to do so. So yeah, no thanks. I personally would rather not see all these creepy demons lurking over my shoulder. It's just best to just not know. But I know some people are curious, and I know a lot of you guys are curious. So you've probably tried this. Let me know what happens when you try it in the comment section below. And if nothing happened, just make up a story. Some of these older planchettes don't have a viewing glass, so I think this urban legend became more popular when the Ouija board movies were released because they look through it. Okay, next up at number 3, always dismiss the spirit. If you ever played the Ouija board, you know one of the major rules is to say, "Goodbye, spirits, like I'm done playing with you, night night, leave me alone now." If you don't do this, very bad things can happen. According to the urban legend, if you don't firmly say goodbye to the spirits, the portal remains open and they will be able to pass through and do whatever they want to you. Another urban legend claims that if you don't say goodbye to the spirits will demand that you give them a sacrifice, and if you don't give them one, they will send demons after you. Coincidentally, a lot of people who have failed to close the portal have reportedly gone insane and now live in mental institutions. I'm not sure if I 100% believe that. So, but for this one, lesson learned. Don't forget to say goodbye, or better yet, how about you don't say hello? Don't start playing the game. The Ouija board can make you do things against your will, and this forces its way into number 2. Apparently, if you mess around with the Ouija board and you don't use it properly, demons or spirits can take control of your actions and thoughts and force you to do things that you never thought were possible. Take, for example, the murder of Brian Roach. He was slaughtered by his mother-in-law back in 2001 when the police interrogated her. She said that she was playing with the Ouija board when her 2 granddaughters and board told her to kill him. Later on, she also tried to kill the youngest daughter because she thought she was being possessed. And over in the UK, Paul Carroll drowned and dismembered the family dog, and his wife and kids took a bunch of prescription pills after the Ouija board session and tried to set the house on fire. And finally, in at number 1, I think we've done it again. We've saved the best for last, or worst for last in this case. We have Zuzu the Demon. Zuzu is one of the most infamous demons that is known to cause havoc and scary paranormal activities during Ouija board sessions. No one knows the history of Zozo, but those who are unfortunate enough to contact Zozo have reported terrifying experiences. He is most often contacted through the Ouija board and has the potential to do some significant physical and mental harm to other users. One of the most famous encounters with Zozo was the man from Oklahoma. He first ran into this demon while he was playing the Ouija board with his girlfriend. At first, the Zozo was sharing information with him about the spiritual world, so this made the man addicted to the Ouija board, but over time Zozo became much more sinister. The man played so often that he eventually had a nervous breakdown and was claiming that demons were constantly following him. Zozo even said that he would steal the spirits of his daughter. When she nearly died, the man attempted to perform an exorcism to get Zozo away from his family, but that just him off even more, so now he runs a website and warns people about the dangers about messing around with the Zozo the Demon.
Coming into number 10, we have the Mexican possession. Americans 22-year-old Alexandra Huerto and her 23-year-old brother Sergio played with an Ouija board in a Mexican village along with their 18-year-old cousin Fernando. It seems they were visiting family in San Juan Talacento at the time. It seems that the trio entered a trance-like state, with Alexandra later succumbing to growling. The boys were also said to show signs of possession, saying that they were going blind and deaf and suffering hallucinations. The trio's story ended up in the Daily Mail, where we can see pictures of the possessed young adults. It seems that they were admitted to a hospital after a medical rescue. The town spokesman Victor Demessa said that it was very complicated. He said that the trio were suffering from involuntary movements which made transporting them difficult. Local priests refused to perform an exorcism on the American citizens as they weren't local churchgoers. The parents of the young adults said that they were saved with painkillers, anti-stress meds and eye drops. Whether or not they were actually possessed, or they just convinced themselves that they were, we don't know. Either way, I have to say it was pretty terrifying. This girl managed to get possessed by an online Ouija board. This is very 21st century at number 9. That's right, at number 9 we have paramedics for Patricia. Patricia Quisepi was possessed after playing with an Ouija board app on her phone. Shocking footage of her purported demonic possession was recorded and then circulated on the internet. Doctors were called to the scene and she struggled for over half an hour before she was finally restrained. You can actually see some of the footage here. So creepy. She does appear to be talking in a deep voice as if she is inhabited by a demon. The woman from Lima in Peru had been playing with her friends on the mobile version of the board game. Who knew spirits were so tech savvy? This next story is also from Peru. We have 30 screaming kids at number 8. In Peru in 2018, 30 kids suffered from mass hysteria after a kid brought in a Ouija board and a book of black magic to school. It turns out that the young girl was the daughter of a teacher in San Jose de Samarillo. This is in the Loreto region of Peru. Now there's a video of one of the girls who used the board acting possessed and screaming. It's very intense. It seems like she's saying this is your fault, amongst other things. The school involved suspended classes for a week following the incident, and parents of the children involved were said to have taken their kids to evangelical churches in the area. Coming into number 7 we have The Shattering. YouTuber Mellow Bird is known for his beliefs in the paranormal. His whole YouTube channel is made up of videos of ghosts, ghouls and other paranormal occurrences. In one video he is seen playing with an Ouija board, only this happens. Have a look. Okay, let's have a look even slower and see what we think. Is this legit? Honestly, it really does seem to shatter. It also seems that he had a very angry poltergeist in the room, like, yikes. This is, I guess, why you don't play with Ouija boards. I don't want glass in my hand. Coming into number 6, we have the McDonald's Ouija board. In 2014, this image of a Happy Meal was circulated online. Now it seems that the fast food giants were embracing Halloween by experimenting with spookier marketing. The only thing is, well, how appropriate is it to give your kids a tool to contact the dead? Aside a seance with your burger and fries? Like, I don't know. Honestly, it's not very appropriate at all, but it does turn out it was just a joke by actress and paranormal investigator Amy Bruni. That being said, hundreds of thousands of people believed it when her post on Facebook went viral. Scarily for Amy, the joke resulted in her receiving actual death threats. In August 2014, Amy tweeted, "True story, more than one person has wished death on me and my family because I posted the McDonald's Ouija board Happy Meal joke." I don't know, the internet's a sensitive place. Save your jokes. Save them. Okay, that may have been a joke, but bear this in mind. At number 5, we have The Best Seller. Scarier than a lot of things on this list, Hasbro Games, the kids board game company behind Operation, Bop It, Connect 4 and Hungry Hungry Hippos, actually own the rights to Ouija boards these days, and they're a big bestseller. Mediums are particularly disturbed by the success of the game, claiming that it is not a toy. Over the Christmas 2014 period, the game saw a particular upsurge in sales. Should we be worried that more and more people are contacting the dead as a means of entertainment? Honestly, I think so. Coming into number 4, we have With You. On BuzzFeed, editors asked members of the BuzzFeed community to write in their scary Ouija experiences. They then made a post compiling the responses. Now this story jumped out from Josie C41. She wrote, "I got my board after months of harmless paranormal activity in my house. When I contacted something, the planchette started doing figure of 8s across the board, which is a huge no-no. That means something demonic was present. I didn't touch it for months, but when I tried again, I asked where the spirit was in the room. It was at that point that she said her vision went spotty. She said, I saw a vivid image in my head jerking back, and the words 'with you' were whispered into my ear by something I couldn't see." Woo! She went on to say that she sold the board, and honestly I can't blame her. This is not what you want at all. Like, can you even imagine? You already think you're going mad, but you buy an Ouija board just to make sure that you aren't being haunted. Then it turns out that you are. There's a spirit, and it's not even a nice one, it's a nasty one. Coming into number 3, we have Zozo. Zozo is said to be a demon that regularly pops
pops up when people use Ouija boards, and he is not a good presence. Zozo was first brought into wider public knowledge when a man named Darren Wayne Evans mentioned him on a message board called The True Ghost Tales. The thread from Evans was intended to warn others about the dangers of using an Ouija. He said, "During my experience with Ouija boards, one particular spirit always seemed compelled to make its presence known. Its name is Zozo." He continued the post by saying, "Today I refuse to even pronounce its name, as I believe the mere pronunciation of it can cause it to manifest itself. Too many times to count it has at first pretended to be a nice spirit, or pretended to be whomever I was trying to contact, but eventually it showed its true self, cussing me, threatening me and others present in the room." He also wrote that the demon attacked his family and caused him extreme bouts of bad luck. While some skeptics believe that Evans made up the demon, it seems that other mentions of Zozo have cropped up from unlucky Ouija users. It is thought that Zozo may be another name for the demon Pazuzu, the demon suspected in the Roland Doe case, the inspiration behind the Exorcist movie. Experts say that you know you're in the company of Zozo if the planchette is moving to the Z, or drawing a figure of 8 between the Z and the O. Zozo is also said to sometimes leave scratches on people's bodies. You know what? Maybe that's what happened here at number 2. That's right, at number 2 we have a full-on dose of scratching. 5 years ago, Redditor Bofontes wrote a post called "Do Not Use an Ouija Board." They said they were sharing an update and photos. They shared 3 scary pictures saying that this was what happened to them as a result of using a homemade Ouija board. The scratches on his back and chest looked particularly nasty. Did he encounter Zozo? In this post he said that when he asked the spirit if it was them who scratched him, they said yes, replying that they were there specifically for him and they weren't gonna leave. Honestly, I feel like I need an update. One person who commented on the thread was very concerned. NinKiwi007 wrote, "Bro, one of those groups of scratches is the Trinity. You can guess its description by its name, 3 scratches. That means it's definitely something demonic. You need to leave. If it follows you, get help. Don't try to handle this by yourself. This is bad, and if you aren't already, you should take this very seriously." Okay, that's pretty stressful. I don't know what I would do other than not use an Ouija board. Finally, coming into number 1, we have The Story of Veronica. Some of you may have watched the popular Netflix movie Veronica, which is hailed as one of the best modern scary movies. The film itself is truly chilling, with some calling it too scary to even finish. It is about a girl in Madrid that accidentally invokes a demon when she gets a drop of her blood on the glass planchette. Things don't end so well for her, but I think that you should watch the movie. The reason I bring it up is that the film is actually loosely based on real life events, which I think are even scarier. Esther Gina Guatarez Lazaro died suddenly in August 1991, and her parents were convinced it was to do with her interest in the occult and playing with an Ouija board. It seems that the girl had joined a group, a seance, that went wrong, after which she was plagued by seizures and hallucinations. After her death around a year later, her parents were still haunted. They claimed that doors would slam in their home and shadowy figures would lurk in corners. They even said that they felt a spirit trying to physically harm them and went around turning crucifixes in their home upside down. In the end, her surviving family moved from their home and offloaded the possessed spirit of their dead daughter. Someone else's problem, I guess.
Starting us off at number 10, we have The Spirit. This one's from Reddit user Gothsby29, who shared that this occurred a few days after her ex had lost his friend in an airplane crash. The couple took out the Ouija board to use it, and the friend was very present, very scared, and very much wanting to communicate. Now the duo got a bit freaked out and decided to stop using it, and as soon as they did, the user felt this presence in the corner of the room. She took a deep breath and closed her eyes, and all of a sudden the planchette started moving around the board, spelling words on its own. Exhausted and now drained, the user took a nap, and 30 exact minutes later she bolted out of bed because she saw the skeletal spirit standing in the corner of the room. The spirit ran at her and started screaming with a massive black mouth. The user obviously started screaming, and her boyfriend woke up and tried to get it off her, but then she just ran straight out of the house. Coming in at number 9 is the Mars Volta. Now the Mars Volta was an American progressive rock band that were active from 2001 to 2012. The guitarist of the band, Omar, bought an antique Ouija board at a flea market in Jerusalem as a birthday gift for lead singer of the band, Cedric. Now the two started playing with the the board in the tour bus after their shows, and they ended up contacting a spirit named Goliath. Its responses were innocent at first, but Omar got nervous since Goliath started making threatening demands, and Cedric was getting more and more obsessed with contacting him. Omar ended up secretly burying the board, but that did nothing to stop Goliath. It usually never does. The band started being terrorized with mishaps and chaos after that point. Equipment started having severe problems, Omar's studio was wiped out in a freak flood, their drummer quit, and Cedric suffered from a critical foot injury. All this happened in such a short period of time, and it all happened after Omar got rid of the Ouija board, that he was convinced that these things were happening because of Goliath. And boy, you are not wrong. At number 8 we have The Horse. This one was shared by Redditor Overdose Baby Blue, who said her mum always used to warn her about using Ouija boards because of what she went through herself. The mum shared that during one instance of using a Ouija board, the spirit they were talking to seemed quite violent and actually had it in for her. She shrugged it off and got in her car to go home as everything was normal. But as she was driving home, a horse literally appeared out of nowhere and started running towards her car. The mum ended up hitting it and killing it in a very gruesome way, but she was 100% sure it was to do with the Ouija board, because how the hell would a random black horse appear in the middle of the city in the afternoon? That is not a usual habitat for horses. Like, where'd you come from? Filling on number 7 slot is the Ancient Spirit. This one comes from Reddit user Tessa B4, who said her and her friend met a female spirit through their Ouija board that claimed she was 40 years old when she died. She was born in 91 BC and spoke a now dead language, so the user and her friend could only ask yes or no questions. Turns out the way she died was absolutely horrible. Her own mother poisoned her and she had no idea why. The users then asked if that was all she wanted to share with them, and it was. Guess when you've been holding on to something like that for so long, you're just good with telling anyone who's willing to listen. Now at number 6 is 10 Hours. So this one was shared by Reddit user Lena Resden, who shared when they were about 14 or 15, they played with the Ouija board quite often. One night at 9 PM, she was playing with her friend and started getting some very bizarre responses. The user couldn't remember them now since the incident happened 27 years ago, but the entity did say that he was from Malaysia and that he was there to protect them. That's apparently the last thing they remembered, because they blinked and it was suddenly 7 AM. They didn't go to bed or something, they just literally lost 10 hours of their life and they have no idea what happened in that time or where that time even went. Neither of them remember. They just looked at each other and boom, 7 AM. Like, excuse me? I want those 10 hours of my life back. Coming in at number 5 is Get the Boy. This was shared by an anonymous Redditor who said their friend mentioned that they had a Ouija board, so they decided to mess with it. Big no-no, my friend. Now initially their friend said no, but then she warmed up to the idea and agreed to get it out as long as she didn't have to participate. The user set it up and asked if anyone was there and got no response. Then, trying to be a cool teenager as they all are, they said if anything is in here and not talking, you're a coward. And again, after getting no response, they just put the board away. About a week later, the user was sleeping during a thunderstorm. How very cliche, I know. They woke up midway to complete darkness and tried going back to sleep. 30 seconds later, they heard someone or something whisper "Get the boy" in a very raspy voice. Thinking it was them just hearing things, the user went back to sleep to then hear "Get the boy" much louder before hearing a door slam shut downstairs. He up and got the hell out of there because he was the only one at home at the time, so we're not trying to mess with anyone. No Ouija entity, no. At number 4 is The Evidence. Now this one was shared by Fontes on Reddit, who shared 3 images of him claiming that's what happened to him after using a homemade Ouija board. He asked the entity a bunch of questions and also asked if the spirit was the one who had scratched his chest a week prior after using the board, and the spirit replied yes, and that it was here for him and that it was not going to leave him alone. These are the images that he shared. Now okay, obviously these look really bad, but I don't even know if this is a real one or not. These scratches could have come from another accident or an animal attack, I have no clue, but we kind of just have to give him the benefit of the doubt. But then again, who would just do this for internet clout? Actually, many people would do that for internet clout, but we are gonna give him the benefit of the doubt, people. Filling our number 3 slot is Careful What You Wish For. This one really gave me the creeps, to be honest, and was shared by Back in Om Nom Nam on Reddit. They shared that about 15 years back, his sister had some friends over and they were all watching a horror movie in the basement. Already the start of a very horrific night, just by the sounds of that. The friends also had a Ouija board with them, so they of course tried it. Dramatically, they started cussing at it, calling it fake and and so forth, and then went back to watching the movie. Out of nowhere, all the lights and electricity goes out in the house, and they all start screaming their heads off, which is, an accurate response. The TV then comes back on, blaring this awful noise, and at this point the girls are hysterically crying. The TV then turns off, and when it turns back on, the display is completely black except for the words, "This is not a game anymore." I would have shot myself at that point. And at this point, everyone runs out of the house, completely forgetting their dog in there. When they finally build up the courage to come back, their dog was waiting on the front porch with the darkest eyes ever and the look of pure evil. Now at number 2 is Steve Part 1. So this one was shared by Reddit user KR Chrome. He said he was playing with a Ouija board with his friends when he was young. While they were playing, his 9-year-old bratty cousin came in asking to play, and they said no because he was too young, but that he was welcome to watch if he wanted to. He then snitched and told his mum, who then walked in, shouted at all the kids, snapped the board in half, and then stepped on the planchette. A month later, the user's aunt comes to visit again, and she is not looking good, my friend. She's super pale, has bags under her eyes, and is very nervous at everything that moves. Now the cousin couldn't come since he had fallen down the stairs and was in the hospital. The aunt then shares with the user's mum that the last month has been absolutely awful for her. She's been hearing weird noises at night. The cousin is apparently obsessed with an imaginary friend called Steve, which, by the way, was the same spirit the kids were talking to when they were playing with the Ouija board. See how everything's just connecting together now? Things around her house had started breaking, her drapes randomly caught on fire despite no fire source nearby, and her son was in the room the whole time and claimed Steve did it. Not believing him, the aunt grounded him and woke up the next morning with scratches all over her arms, and it doesn't even end there. She shared that she was so paranoid someone was breaking into her house every night that she even called the police, who found absolutely nothing. Paranoid with her kids still in the hospital, she moves in with the user's family for a while. Cliffhanger, on to part 2. And finally, at number 1 is Steve Part 2. So after the aunt moved in, the user and his family realized nothing was actually happening that was deemed odd. The aunt continued to see dark figures out of the corner of her eye, so nothing was going well for her. She's like the victim of this whole scenario. When her son was discharged from the hospital, she continued seeing things, and one day she saw him in the reflection of the mirror and started shouting at him for not being at school, and then his reflection just vanished. Turns out he never even left school. Child Protective Services then came to the house to see if she was fit to take care of her son, and turns out she wasn't, and so she lost custody of her child, and she was also admitted to a mental hospital. This story has so many twists and turns, I'm actually sweating, you guys. Like, this is where is this going? The user and his family would visit her regularly, and he eventually came clean and said her bad luck and deterioration was most likely because of her breaking the Ouija board, and she went off, flipping tables, screaming at the user, blaming it on him. She then went to grab a chair to attack him with it before an orderly came in and subdued her. A month later, she was found dead in the hospital because she had choked in her own room. They found a marble in her throat and weren't sure if it was accidental, whether it was self-inflicted, or whether Steve finally finished the job.